I'm going to share with you today a manuscript I wrote about my husband Joe, entitled, "He Took My Breath, I Gave Him My Life." For 30 years I have traveled through life with Joe. He has impressed me with his compassion for children and his ability to play with them on their level. His passion for hunting drives him to a level of dedication that leaves me in awe. His fearless sense of adventure is inspiring. When I knew him at the age of 16, his curly locks of hair waved behind him as he led the pack in the 2-mile race. His legs, muscular and lean, carried him to the finish line with grace and glory. His blue eyes were breathtaking as his smile shone through them and he gently kissed my cheek. The more time we spent together, I learned that he has a compulsive passion for things in his life. Long-distance running wasn't just a sport. At times it was his means of transportation, from running 10 miles to visit a friend or making his way to the woods regularly to hunt. The first time I remember helping him after a hunt clean a rabbit. He cut through the skin and exposed the meat and bone of the animal's legs. I held the legs as the sound of tearing flesh gave away and the hide of the rabbit turned inside out. I heard the crunch of neck bones as the head was removed, leaving raw meat ready for the oven. The aroma of Worcestershire sauce and seasoning filled the kitchen as the tender meat fell off the bone. Supper was full of flavor that day. For a few years, we traveled across the country together, delivering school buses and exploring the landscape. On a trip alone, his daring allowed him to experience tracking a moose in the wilderness of Canada, where he eventually found himself in the center of that herd of moose. One time in Oregon, we hiked up a trail to a lookout where an Indian squaw had sacrificed her life for the sake of her tribe. As the toe of my shoe was an inch away from the cliff, I trustingly gripped Joe's arm and leaned out to see the water flowing over and crashing into the stream 400 feet below. As the water fell, I imagined that young girl allowing herself to follow the flow of the water. Shivers ran down my spine. The lookout was the end of the trail, but not for us. Before I knew it, I had followed Joe onto a boulder fused to the edge of the mountain. The wind was refreshing as we sat on that solid rock, with the sun warming us in the mountain air. We could see our buses sitting in the parking lot, and they looked no bigger than a child's toy. Over our 30 years together, I have watched his playfulness with children. He would walk in the door after coaching Little League with his shirt ripped from the neckline because he had challenged his team to a wrestling match. One year there was a handicapped boy on our team, and Joe was so patient in teaching him the game. On one of the last games of the season, we had taken the field, and the crack of the bat sent the ball deep into the outfield towards that young boy. As we watched the ball heading for him, our stomachs tightened in anticipation of what was about to happen. Then it happened. The ball landed in his glove as he tightened the grip around the ball. The sound of the crowd roared and tears filled the eyes of the people watching, and the boy's face shone with amazement and relief. He was so proud. I can only imagine the sense of satisfaction Joe must have felt, yet he would never take credit for what happened that day. Joe is always getting kids in trouble for being too rowdy because he gets them all excited. Many people have told me how wonderful he is with kids. He has a way of bringing out the best in people. Joe has brought so much adventure and enjoyment to my life and the lives of our children. When our children were 4 and 6, he brought a black bear cub home. For 4 months it climbed our trees and ran around the yard as our children watched this animal that was as big as they were. That same summer we went to a lake at a local campground. At the end of the lake were 2 cement landings that formed a spillway where the creek fell about 40 feet below. Joe cradled my son Korak and jumped from one cement landing across the water to the other cement landing. As Korak squealed with excitement, Joe leaped back and forth. My daughter Katia stood impatiently waiting her turn. My stomach churned with anxiety until I finally had to walk away. Recently I tagged along as Joe went to finish his deer stand. He climbed the ladder that led to the stand about 15 feet in the air. I watched from the ground as he reached out past the edge of the stand, attaching artificial limbs from a Christmas tree as camouflage for the stand. As it turned out, he needed more limbs, so there I was climbing to uncomfortable heights with a handful of limbs. Once I reached the ground again, he had me remove the ladder so he could adjust the pull rope for his bow. When he finished, he climbed down the tree with the same strength and grace he had in his youth. He still takes my breath away. He has inspired many people to climb to new heights and experience life instead of just living through it. He engages people, and they benefit from having known him. Thank you.